Good afternoon, sports fans, and welcome into our studio here in the Coop Broadcast Lab at St. Bonaventure for a special edition of the Wolfpack Report, our men's basketball wrap-up show, and what promises to be an exciting look back at what was a thrilling season. I'm Ethan Kibbe, this is Ryan Conahan, and Ryan, here we are months after the start of the season, taking a look back at truly a remarkable run.
You know, Ethan, it's been quite a ride these last 6 months or so. It's been unbelievable. You know, a lot of ups and downs. It wasn't easy for Bonaventure men's basketball. There was definitely some bumps in the road, but strong finish, and just a really incredible year. Glad to be a part of it.
In one word, how would you describe this season for St. Bonaventure?
One word, I'd say it was just. I say the word that describes the team most is perseverance. You know, after a Jalen Adams injury earlier in the season, and then dropping a 2-4 early on in the A-10 season, and then rattling off 13 straight wins, I think that just shows the team's perseverance. I think that would be the one word to describe this team.
It's an excellent choice of words there. You talked that Jalen Adams didn't play to begin the season. In some ways, he didn't play to end the season. We'll get into that right now and take a peek, picking things up in the Atlantic 10 tournament, where the team first took on Richmond, Bonaventure the 2 seed, Richmond the 7 seed. Let's take a look at how that game went down. So here we are, and St. Bonaventure favored in this game, but back and forth early on.
Yeah, Ethan, it was really a back-and-forth game early on. For the first couple minutes, neither team could really score a bucket until they broke the seal, and then it kind of opened up a bit.
And yeah, you're watching this thing to begin, at least I know, and Richmond's playing well. St. Bonaventure a little bit sluggish to start. Worrisome there?
Yeah, a little bit, because, Bonaventure hadn't played since the previous Saturday, so they were coming off quite a bit of rest there. And they didn't look so sharp to start, but, down the stretch, Matt Mobley really got a shot going, and they were able to figure things out.
Yes, he did, and Courtney Stockard, a player that just cannot be overlooked for St. Bonaventure. He was the little engine that could for this team's offense.
He's the motor of the team, Ethan, and when he's going and running the floor and making great passes out to Mobley and Adams, the Bonnies are really unstoppable.
You see him there. You just saw him with a big dunk, and then as we move things into the second half, I'm not sure what Matt Mobley did in the locker room. I think he must have put some icy hot on his feet because he came out hot in the second half.
Yeah, maybe like Space Jam, Michael Seeker stuff. He couldn't miss in the second half. 9 threes in total on the game. He was shooting from everywhere, all over the floor, deep, just over the line. He was on fire.
And between the play of Stockard, and you also look at Mobley, of course, with a fantastic game, someone who gets overlooked a little bit, I think, is LaDarian Griffin. You see him right there.
He was great down the stretch in these last few games on the offensive end, and, mostly LaDarian's known for his defense, but he was great setting hard screens, rolling, especially on the offensive glass, a couple of great putback dunks.
Here we see Mobley again for 3, and at this point you're thinking St. Bonaventure's up to a big lead, but then back come the Spiders. Courtney Stockard gets hurt, and the game changes.
Yeah, Ethan, I was at the game, and I was saying to a friend next to me that I was worried that they'd come back. And he's like, no, it'll be okay. But, down the stretch, never doubt the Spiders. They run good offense, and they just needed a couple shots to fall.
We see a shot falling right there to make that a 5-point game. It gets even closer than that. Down the stretch into the second half, Spiders never gave up in this one. And really, until the wire, this game was up in question.
No, it wasn't looking too good for the Bonnies there when the Spiders went on that last run. Luckily, they got a couple. The Bonnies defense forced a couple misses at the end, and the Bonnies finished their free throws, and they were able to come out victorious there.
Just a matter of doing just enough to survive and advance, and they say. You always think about that in regard to the NCAA tournament, but the Bonnies needed it just in the Atlantic 10 tournament. And Ryan, that Richmond game would prove to be markedly more important than I think some of the Bonnies and certainly some of their fans thought.
Yeah, definitely, Ethan. Going into the weekend, going into the A-10 tournament weekend, a lot of people thought maybe the Bonnies didn't need to win if a couple other games across the country went their way. But it turns out, we'll see on Selection Sunday in a few minutes, that win was more monumental than many thought.
And Ryan, that's a 2 seed against a 7 seed. St. Bonaventure favored in that game, but as we know, there's a lot of parity in the Atlantic 10.
Yeah, no, top to bottom. I mean, any team can win any game on any given day, really, and it's really unbelievable in the A-10 how top teams bottom teams knock off top seeds a lot. And, this didn't happen for the first time in the A-10 tournament in a long time. So, I mean, it was not an easy game by any stretch of the means.
No, it wasn't. And speaking of not easy, playing without Courtney Stockard, not easy. The Bonnies experienced that down the stretch without him for the last 10 minutes. How much did that game show his importance?
It showed how Courtney might not be the Bonnies' best player, but he's definitely the Bonnies' most important player, I think, because when he's not on the floor, he sets the tone. When he's on the floor, he sets the tone for the rest of the team, and you could definitely tell the energy on the floor went down when he had to go off with his leg injury.
ended up hurting his hamstring. The Bonnies would have to play without him against Davidson, and that was a tricky game for them. We'll take a look at the highlights right now and see how that game went down. So here it is. It's St. Bonaventure, the 2 seed, taking on Davidson, the 3 seed, and early on, this was just a shooting demonstration from both teams. We were, 5 minutes into the game before we even saw a 2-point bucket?
Yeah, it was something like that, Ethan. I think Davidson's first 5 or 6 made field goals were 3-pointers. It was really unbelievable.
We can see the back and forth going on here, and this was just incredible. One team would go down and bury a 3. The other team answers right back with a deep 3 of its own. Fantastic basketball early.
Yeah, the ball moving from both sides was fantastic, and Mobley continuing his hot streak, as was Peyton Aldridge for the Wildcats.
Peyton Aldridge, co-Atlantic 10 Player of the Year. You see him right there from downtown. Swish. My goodness, can he play?
He was really unbelievable down the whole stretch of the tournament. That's why they ended up winning the whole thing.
Yes, they did. Not to give the spoiler away as to who's going to take this game, although I would imagine if you're watching this show, you already know what happened. We see the Bonnies here trying to hang tight in the first half, and for the most part, they did that. They only trailed by 6 after 1.
Yeah, no, it was a close game. It was just a couple more shots fell for Davidson. They got a few more open looks, and that's what it came down to. But the Bonnies were right there.
How much does not having Courtney Stockard play a role in this? Because Davidson, particularly defensively, was able to key in on Mobley and Adams, who, as we see here, still certainly made their fair share of shots. But offensively, or rather defensively for St. Bonaventure, you're without Stockard, who's a very solid defender.
Yeah, without on both sides of the ball, Stockard, when he's on the offensive side, you can spread the floor more, and they can't key as much on Jay Adams and Matt Mobley. But then on the defensive end, it also hurts you because he can't guard players like Kellen Grady or Peyton Aldridge, which he's probably the best defender the Bonnies have down the stretch.
Probably so. There's Aldridge again. Other side, same result. He was just magnificent in this game. Really no other word to describe his play. He powers that team.
No, he's really unbelievable, and there's a reason he's co-player of the year. He doesn't crack under the pressure. He's very calm. He's very, very relaxed, and you can see from all the Davidson players.
6 of 7 from downtown was Peyton Aldridge. The rest of his team dumped in another 10 3-pointers. That's right, 16 3-pointers for Davidson. And when the team's shooting like that, even if you have Courtney Stockard, that's a tough out.
You're not going to win many times when they're shooting the lights out like that. And the problem with this game was that in the second half, whenever the Bonnies cut it close to 2 and 3 points or even got it tied, they just couldn't get over the hump and take the lead. And I think with the crowd that was there and all this, I think if that had happened, they might have been able to take control of the game. But unfortunately, that's not the way it went.
So Ryan, after this game, the Bonnies know that they're out of the Atlantic 10 tournament. They think they're probably going to be playing in the postseason in the NCAA tournament, but it's sweaty palms times for about the next 24 to 30 hours.
Yeah, no, definitely, Ethan. Especially after what happened 2 years ago with losing on the Friday night when they thought they were in. They were a little more comfortable this year, definitely with the Saturday night, but they needed a couple of games, around the country and other conference tournaments to go their way. Make sure there weren't bid steals, especially in the A10 tournament. Knowing Davidson could steal a bid could definitely hurt the Bonnies.
Let's talk about Jalen Adams for a moment. In the game against Richmond, only 5 points for him, just 1 field goal, then 3 free throws. Against Davidson, he has 20 points, but they're kind of a quiet 20 points.
No, I was there myself, Ethan, and it was probably the quietest 20 points I've ever seen him score. He was scoring a lot late, a lot of free throws down the stretch. It did, not the normal, the crunch time buckets that we see Jalen get. And I don't know, he had, a good performance on paper, but it wasn't maybe the performance the Bonnies needed down the stretch.
A good performance on paper, perhaps the perfect way to describe it. We've got box scores in front of us, and initially that 20 points jumps right out, but then you watch the game and you realize he wasn't the impact player for them that he had been most of the year.
No, not at all. Mobley was fantastic during the A10 tournament as well as Courtney, and not having Courtney definitely, I think, hurt Jalen because you can't run a lot of the high pick and roll that he normally likes to run, and he couldn't get downhill and find open shots, and you can tell he wasn't in his normal rhythm as he had been in previous games leading to the A10 tournament.
No, he wasn't, and as a result, St. Bonaventure bumped from the Atlantic 10 tournament. Davidson would go on to play Rhode Island and win the Atlantic 10 championship in an absolute thriller of a game. They hung on for the victory and so got themselves an automatic bid in the NCAA tournament. They knew they'd be in the NCAA tournament. Rhode Island knew it would be in, but would the Bonnies be in? Let's take a peek now and see the reaction of the team as they watched the selection show last Sunday. Sound up on this one. No better experience than seeing just jubilation from people when they realize they've accomplish something that was worked their entire careers for.
No, it's truly unbelievable, especially for the guys that had been on that team 2 years ago during the smell. But you can really see the emotion pour off their faces in this video. It was really incredible, especially for the whole staff, the managers, the players, the coaching staff. It was really a sight to see.
Just the culmination of years and years of hard work. Here's some people who haven't worked quite so hard, but I don't think they're any less happy.
No, they seem pretty joyous there, Ethan.
It was the celebration that St. Bonaventure hosted in the Riley Center to watch the party. Then the team came down during the selection show, but after it had seen it had been announced and had made the tournament. Probably a safe play there. You want to be sure that your team is in rather than having them watching with all the fans and ending up maybe getting snubbed, and that would be kind of difficult to watch. And as it were, things were a little bit difficult to watch coming back anyway, because while the team was walking down to join the fans on the court, they found that they were in a play-in game.
Yeah, it was. I don't say completely surprised. A couple of the bracketologists had it happening after Davidson had won the conference tournament. You know, at that point, I think the Bonnies were just happy that they were in. You know, I was in that room 2 years ago, and it was probably the worst hour, one of the worst hours of my life. It was just really not a great place to be. And, you know, I think the Bonnies were ready for, it was unfortunate they had to go play in Dayton, but they were ready for the challenge that presented itself. You know, they'd be on a national stage. They get to really showcase their talents.
So St. Bonaventure would be given an 11 seed by the tournament committee, considered one of the last 4 at-large bids, one of the last 4 teams into the tournament, until they'd have to, for lack of a better term, play their way in. They were in the field of 68, needed to play into the field of 64, and like you said, they'd be matched up with UCLA to do that. Just a blue blood program of college basketball taking on little old St. Bonaventure, who hasn't been prominent in basketball in 45 years.
Yeah, no, it's truly incredible. You know, UCLA, probably the most storied college basketball program in the history, and you know, it was maybe not UCLA's greatest team and Coach Alford's greatest team, but the Bonnies were ready, and you know, we, like Coach Schmidt said, we wanted the matchup that never happened from 1970, and the Bonnies got it.
Yes, they did. Let's take a peek at how that went down right now. St. Bonaventure comes out a little bit flat. UCLA, though, as you'll see, was ready to rock and roll in this game. Just a fantastic outing from the Bruins early. They jumped out to a big lead on St. Bonaventure. We take a look at the highlights here. That's 3, 4, 5 steps beyond the arc. Swish.
No, Holiday, he was incredible early, and you know, the Bruins really exposed the man defense that Bonaventure was throwing out early in the game. I think they hit their first 5 threes or something like that. They were really streaky to start, and the Bonnies couldn't get anything going offensively.
No, the first TV timeout did not come soon enough for St. Bonaventure. I think it settled the team down a little bit. Certainly a home court advantage of sorts playing in Dayton with so many St. Bonaventure fans. Not too many people made the flight from Los Angeles to Dayton.
No, not a lot. Yeah, definitely not a lot of people made that 5-hour trek. You know, the Bonnies were familiar with this arena, and they had a good fan base there, so it was just only a matter of time. Once they got the offense going, they were going to be right there.
And Ryan, watching this game from an unbiased position, especially through the first half and of course through the second as well, this was just a fantastic basketball game.
No, really back and forth, and you know, when the Bonnies adjusted went to the matchup zone defense, it really became a tight game, and the ball movement was great on the Bonnies offensive end, and you know, UCLA was hanging tough the entire time.
Let's talk defense for a while, because that maybe more than anything is the thing that St. Bonaventure did well. Forced so many turnovers in this game, forcing 18 of them on UCLA, 20 rather, I apologize. 20 turnovers. That's an incredible number. Yeah,
normally the Bonnies defense doesn't force turnovers like that at that rate. You know, the one thing that stood out to me most was the points off turnovers. It was 30-3 to the Bonnies. If you're getting 30 points off turnovers, you're going to win most of your games, and that was evident in this matchup.
And St. Bonaventure, oddly, you think not a team with bona fide big men. You have Amadi Ekpezi, Ladarian Griffin that are more 4 players than 5 that end up having to play the center position. 30 points in the paint for them.
Yeah, 30 points in the paint to 20 to a much larger UCLA team. They had 3 starters over 6'9", and the Bonnies' tallest starter is Amadi Ekpezi at 6'10", and he still only gets limited minutes. And you know, the Bonnies didn't back down. You know, Idris Taki had 11 rebounds in the game at only 6'5". I think they list him at 6'6", which is pretty generous as a guard. He was incredible. And then the story of the day was really Courtney Stockard, though. He was incredible on both ends of the floor. 26 points for him, a great showing. Matt Mobley drops 14 as well for St. Bonaventure. Those two, as they had kind of down the stretch for this team, carried the offense once again. Yeah, you know, Courtney was truly unbelievable getting out in the open floor. He hit some big three-pointers down the stretch as well, which is really not his game, but he's been hot of late, and he just let it ride, especially coming off a tough leg injury in the A10 tournament.
Yeah, he didn't look like he was favoring that hamstring at all. I thought he might have been a step slower perhaps than usual, but as a general rule, Courtney Stockard absolutely fantastic in that game. The Bonnies get their first tournament win in 48 years, knocking off UCLA. And so that just means that they're into the round of 64. They knew they'd have to take on Florida. But before we get to that, let's break down a little bit more of this UCLA game, because Jalen Adams, I don't know what his degree is going to be in, but I'm wondering if perhaps it's performing arts or magic, because he disappeared in that game.
No, he, it definitely wasn't his best performance of his career by any stretch of the means. I think he shot 2 for 16 from the field. I mean, he had the huge bucket at the end of the game there to seal it, to go ahead and then seal it at the free throw line. But, he just looked, guess the word would look a little stiff. He looked a little stiff. He wasn't moving the way he normally moves around the court. He didn't look as smooth, and his jump shot just wasn't there. He wasn't getting his feet under his shot. Very uncharacteristic of him.
And Ryan, all year we've called games, we've watched him play, and he's just an electric player. So many times he lets his shot come to him. If he's open, he takes the shot, and it's a smooth, confident stroke. In this game, he was passing up open shots, and then he would force contested shots. Yeah,
you're right. It wasn't like him at all. He was very hesitant even when he had open looks, and that's normally not him. When he normally has a window, he lets it fly, but he was forcing shots. He was passing maybe one extra pass when he should have hit it himself. It just wasn't like him. But he showed great, like I said, perseverance throughout the game, hitting that last huge shot. I think he struggled with UCLA. Had a couple longer, taller guards, and at times I found that Jalen struggles when guys have long arms and he can't necessarily get their shot over them.
And Ryan, let's talk about maybe the most touching moment from that day that came just a few moments after the game. Coach Mark Schmidt, being interviewed, dedicates the win to the 1970 team.
That was really a beautiful moment, Ethan. Those guys, when they went to the Final Four, they had the unfortunate leg injury to Lanier down the stretch, and they never got their matchup with UCLA. And I think Coach Wooden was asked about it later years. He said, if we play Bonaventure, they'll win 2 times out of 10. I'm not sure which 2 out of 10 it would have been, and I think it was really nice for that team to see the Bonnies get their win over UCLA.
So the Bonnies did indeed get their win over UCLA, knocked them off, then had a 2 a.m. flight to Dallas to play about 48 hours later and take on Florida. Here's what happened in that game. A little bit of a different story for St. Bonaventure, although the start looked remarkably similar. As we take a peek at it now, both teams come out, they're playing well, and for the first half, both offenses not great, both defenses pretty good. Basketball game as a whole pretty solid.
Yeah, the game was a little sloppy to start. Neither team, the Bonnies scored a better clip than Florida. In not as tough a conference. Florida's not really an offensive juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination, but especially when Jalen Adams went out with his 3rd foul, Nelson Caputo gave some valuable minutes, and Bonnies went on a good run there. But down the stretch, the bench performance from Florida was really, really impressive. They were shooting well. Most of their bench players were shooting really well, and made it tough for the Bonnies.
Taking a peek here at the second half, because that's where most of the offense happened. St. Bonaventure drops 40 in that half. Florida dropped 50 after 22 and 27 respectively in the first half. And you could almost see jitters from Florida. You could excuse that, but St. Bonaventure just flat-footed, I think just tired.
Yeah, 4 games over 8 days, Ethan, you definitely, and then not having the rest from Saturday to Tuesday, really, and it was, Florida was off for an entire week at this point. So, you definitely a little sluggish in the second half. I think the biggest killer was not stopping them early. They jumped out to a 12-point lead right out of the half, and the Bonnies just dug themselves a hole they really couldn't get out of.
Florida did a really nice job there, too. Came out strong to start the second half. And then as we're watching here, just continued to build a little bit on the lead. And every time St. Bonaventure would sort of answer, you thought, okay, here we go. St. Bonaventure's going to try to maybe get back into this game. Florida managed to keep them at arm's length.
Yeah, no, they did. The Bonnies were, in the second half, their best form of offense was getting to the free throw line, and they were getting to the free throw line, stopping the clock, crawling back in there. They could just never hit that 1 or 2 big shots they needed to really jumpstart a run and finish the game.
No, they couldn't. And we're talking about St. Bonaventure trying to claw its way back in. Courtney Stockard, a good performance from him, but not what we'd seen the past few games.
No, you could definitely tell they were keying on him because I guess they obviously saw in the UCLA game once Courtney Stockard got going, it opened things up for other guys. And the guys from Florida are not, the players from Florida are not as big as the UCLA players, but they're definitely a little physically tougher. A little tougher inside the paint. They didn't give the easy looks in the paint that the Bonnies got a few days before.
There's a prime example of inside the paint. That was just a ferocious putback jam. And that really just tells the story of this game. Anytime even Florida did something wrong, like miss a shot, someone's there to clean it up.
Yeah, it was exactly. They were getting a lot of second chance points, and the Bonnies were never able to cut the lead down to a point that was manageable, and that's what really hurt them in the end.
St. Bonaventure with 18 turnovers in this game. After forcing 20 the game before, they knew firsthand just how much turnovers could kill a team. And in this game, they were the team that got bitten by the turnover.
Yeah, it couldn't say it better myself even.
So this one would wrap up. St. Bonaventure falls, losing by 15 to Florida, and the season comes to an end. Bittersweet ending for the seniors for this team, I think, Ryan. Jalen Adams talked after the game that this wasn't how he wanted to go out. He said he thinks he just wore down, was worn out. Matt Mobley, a good game, not a great game. And Idris Taki, one of the more undervalued players for this team. His career at St. Bonaventure also done. Ryan, for each of those three players, how will they each be remembered?
I think they'll each have their own unique way of being remembered. Firstly, want to start with Idris. Just a real glue guy for the Bonnies for the last 3 years. Always making, I guess as the coaches call it, winning plays. He might not necessarily score the game-winning bucket or make the game-winning free throw or anything like that. But on the defensive end, huge rebounds. The way he plays defense, the way he continually fights, you can't teach that. And he really made the most of his time here. And then Jalen, probably the most storied guard that we've ever had here now, and he just really incredible 4 years and just so many big moments, so many big plays. And Matt coming only after 2 years after transferring from not a great program by any means, but scored over 1,000 points in 2 years, has really been incredible. Set the single season record for 3-pointers this year. He was just a guy who never said die. Really incredible career for all three of them.
Ryan, talk to me about the coaching of this team a little bit. The team gets off to a fantastic start. Then there's that lull. They go 2-4 to start conference play. Things are really not looking good. But Mark Schmidt manages to rally his guys and get them playing elite basketball when they really needed to.
Coach Schmidt's a guy. He's tough, but he's fair, and he really coaches every single play that the Bonnies have. He's I would say a control freak. But a lot of head coaches are like that. But he is more prepared than the next guy always. That's the trademark of his coaching career. And the Bonnies were ready for whatever faced them. The Bonnies started off, 2 years ago. They started off 4-0, dropped 3 straight, and then only ended up losing one game in the A-10 2 years ago. And I think he used that kind of as an example how this team could fight through. They had a lot of their tougher games early in the A-10 schedule and on the road. Once they got a couple home games and a couple easier games on the road, they were able to really put it all together. Mobley and Adams got really hot, and they were just able to ride it all the way to the semifinal of the A-10 tournament.
Ryan, we're in an academic setting here at St. Bonaventure in a broadcast lab that's used for students to hone their skills. They receive grades on the courses they take here. So grade St. Bonaventure's basketball team for me. What's the grade on the season?
I have to say, the goal and the expectation was the NCAA tournament, but it's easier said than done. I'd say it's got to be, Ethan. I mean, other than it was a bittersweet end because it wasn't the greatest final game, but I have to give it an A, especially the way they fought back after not having their best player for 7 games to start the year, then starting the A-10 2-4 and rattling off 13 straight. I think I'd have to give it an A, an unbiased A.
I'm convinced there that maybe this is more of a B+ sort of season, a fantastic season. Please don't take that the wrong way. They make the NCAA tournament for the first time in 6 years and win a game for the first time in almost 50. But you look at the talent on this team, you look at just the ability of all of these players, and that Florida game, that was winnable.
Oh, Ethan, it was definitely a winnable game, and under a certain set of circumstances, different set of circumstances, the Bonnies. I think the Bonnies are right there. I think the extra game might have hurt them, and then I think the Florida loss hurts more just because of the high that everybody was on Tuesday after that game. You're thinking, we can beat UCLA. Of course, we'll have a good shot at beating Florida. To the Florida game, the basketball's a game of runs, and we just didn't have any big runs in that game, and that's just unfortunately how it went. But just a great season overall. And
Ryan, let's wrap things up here by spinning it forward to next season. What can fans of this program, players on this program, outside observers who watch the Bonnies, expect to see a few months from now?
I think it's going to be a very different looking Bonnies team, minus Adams, Mobley, and Taki. But, the young guys are coming along, and, the big transfer that, kind of went under the radar this year, Jalen Poyser, has been sitting on the bench for the whole season now. He's transferred from UNLV, from Toronto, from a really good program up there, CIA Bounce. He'll be the guy for the Bonnies next year, scoring-wise, at least on the offensive end. And, Nelson Caputo's a 3-year guy. He's played some significant minutes over the last 3 years, especially in his freshman year. He knows Coach Schmidt's system, and he knows how it works, and him and Poyser grew up together. So, I think the backcourt will be a little bit better than most thinking. Guys like Amani Ekpezi are coming along, and LaDarian Griffin, most improved player in the A-10 this year. Let's hope he can keep that up again next year.
That'll do it for our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for joining us throughout the season. It's been quite a ride from November 4th until today. So glad to have had you with us. And for everyone at our SBU-TV Sports crew, my partner Ryan Conahan, our producer, director, professor, and overall guide, Mr. Rick Carnath, and everyone working out in the control room right now, I'm Ethan Kibbe saying, until next year, turn out the lights and go home, because this party's over.